Peter is a representative from the Council of Community Housing Organizations, and Peter will give sort of his own overview of the Affordable Housing Bonus Program, perhaps another perspective, and then we will still be collecting questions, and we might recycle some of these questions to get another perspective on them.
So, Kirsten, just one thing really quick. So we just I know we know we didn't get to everybody's questions. What we tried to do is field it so that we had as much of a variety of what was coming in as we could. Kirsten, if people want to ask the questions that didn't get answered, how do they do that?
So I'll be here until you are gone,
okay.
So we have that opportunity. And then also, our team will ask for these questions. What we've been doing with all of our public comments is taking them back to our office, typing them up, and then typing up responses. This takes us a little bit of time. We just got an email. It takes a little bit more than 48 hours, but you will see your answers on our website. If you sign up for our mailing list, which is, there's a link to it on the color copy, you will get notified when we update our website with more information.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So make sure to get your questions to us if you have a couple more. We're going to compile them, and we will get them to Kirsten, and we'll follow the process that she just said.
Yeah, more cards.
What, you want more cards?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we'll get them. Okay, so Peter. And
hi, folks. My name is Peter Cohen, and I'm with the Council of Community Housing Organizations. We go by Choo Choo as a nickname. My partner, Fernando Marti, and I have gone to a number of community meetings sharing our analysis of the city's density bonus program. We're generally in the affordable housing advocacy world. We have a number of members of our coalition, and they're in the business of building affordable housing or managing it and providing services for folks in affordable housing and doing housing advocacy. So this is our wheelhouse, I guess, to use that term. So we take this very seriously. We've gotten down into a lot of the technical details. This handout that's on your chair, I think everybody got one. If you don't have one, let us know. I have more copies. Goes through 7 questions. We've tried to organize our analysis and our critical questions in 7 different topical areas. And I know this is still a little bit dense, but it's a lot less dense than how detailed this proposal is. Has anybody actually read the entire thing? And the appendices and the technical studies. It's really quite overwhelming, and I don't say that as a critique. It's just very complicated stuff. So hopefully this helps break it down, and then I can go into some questions on some other details if anybody wants to try to understand some of these. But let me walk through this. You have the handout, so I won't go into as much detail as it says here, but I'll give you the high notes. And I want to also start off by saying that we don't have a formal position. At this point, we don't support the proposal that's in front of you. We think there's a lot of things that need to change for it to be supported. But I will say that, we're in the business of providing affordable housing, which means you need to create it. So at some point, we do believe in producing housing in San Francisco for those who need affordable housing. There's no question. But it's important also that if we're going to use density as a creative tool for housing, it has to be density done right. And that's what we're trying to advocate for, both first by asking the questions and being a friendly critic, but then ultimately, what is density done right? Because we do need to create more affordable housing for folks who need it at all those various levels, and ultimately, that's what we're aiming for. So in the spirit of asking the hard questions, I'll go through these. There's a lot of legal detail about the state density bonus law. We have some disagreement with city staff about the legality of or the situation that San Francisco's in from a legal compliance standpoint. But that said, it's important to do things right rather than to do them in a hurried way. And whatever the analysis of the state density bonus law or the city's attempt to create an alternative, which is what the so-called local program is, which is probably a smart thing to do something even better than the state. It should be done carefully, done slowly enough to get it right, as opposed to the idea that somehow there's going to be a hammer that falls on the city of San Francisco for being out of compliance. Folks, state density bonus law has been around since 1979. San Francisco has never been accused of being anti-housing. So we do have time, and that may be a non-legal analysis, but it's a very clear political analysis that we're a city that's always been pro-housing, and we shouldn't let the threat of a state law and a court case in Napa County force us into urgency until we get something right. That is what we feel is reasonable. Getting more to the specifics of the proposal, the second question is, you heard about what's being provided as the bonus or the incentives, the additional height, the additional density, the changes to parking and to rear yards, and the package of things. We call that, the city is conferring value to a property. Right? When you change those zoning specifications that Kirsten talked about, you're changing the value of the property. That's really what you're doing. It's almost like you're playing with real estate value. So the key question is the city, is the public capturing back almost every penny possible from that conferred value and using that towards affordable housing or whatever other kind of public benefit you want to do? That's the way we should be doing it. I know the city staff believes. Got 2 minutes. So that kind of analysis has been done by the consultants working with the planning department. We think it should be definitely reviewed and done some due diligence on it to make sure there's no money left on the table, and to make sure that if we're going to be aiming for a number, we're aiming for the most aggressive possible. Is 30% the right number? Is 35%? Is it too high? Who knows? That leads to the second question, which is, are the third question, are the income targets correct? You've heard a lot about middle income. Our organization, Choo Choo, supports a middle-income housing strategy, but middle income for who is the question. If you flip the page, there's a neat little diagram in here that we actually lifted from our Mayor's Office of Housing, which shows the whole spectrum, or a large spectrum, of San Franciscans who are in different kinds of employment, from a teacher to a gardener to the daycare provider and the firefighter. People make different kinds of money. It's like Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, right? No people are the same, no household the same. But you can see what we think is a bit of a flaw here is middle income is a very wide range of folks in the workforce, but it's very selective about who's benefiting from this program, which is households from 120 to 140% AMI. That's circled up here on the thing. All the question marks in the middle are households that will not benefit from the program. Folks at 80% of AMI, or 90, or 100, or 110. So it seems too clunky, given the wide range of so-called middle income. The next question is about the types of units we're creating. 1 minute. We've heard a lot about not just middle income, about families, especially in the outer neighborhoods of San Francisco. Families need larger units, not just with numbers of bedrooms, but actual square footage. The program provides 40% of the units as at least 2 bedrooms. The other 60%, by the way the market works, will be singles and studios. That's the way it'll work. Is that enough? Do you want more family units than that? And what's a minimum size for a family unit? What's an actual comfortable space to have your family grow and go through maybe an intergenerational life cycle? So that's the fourth question. I'm going to put together 5, 6, and 7 into kind of a little bit of a narrative. When we did a lot of the planning for the east side of the city, in the Mission District, in South of Market, in the Upper Market, in the Bayview, in Dogpatch, it was a holistic approach to how do you incentivize development but also bring the infrastructure and the community amenities with it. And the reality is this program is about the housing piece. It's not a comprehensive plan. And maybe that's okay. But just to think about how is the infrastructure, whether it's transit or pedestrian safety improvements or community facilities, how are those invested in by the city in some kind of a synchronized way? It's a question on the table. And then in the process of if you will, incentivizing development, you've heard a lot about the threat of displacement. I'm not going to get into a lot of that here because it's been a centerpiece of the dialogue with the planning department. But there's some very real issues about the potential to displace not just residents but small businesses. And what is the appropriate response to that? How do you protect them? How do you mitigate that or relocate them? And very, very lastly, in my 30 seconds over, the approval process. it needs to be right, is all I would say. The community needs to feel like it has a sufficient position of power and leverage to be able to ensure that development is the right fit for the community. There is a revised approval process that's part of this package, and you need to assess for yourselves if you will, in some respects, giving away part of the community's leverage is worth, frankly, the package of outcomes you're getting, which is more affordable housing and whatnot. That's really a trade-off question, but it's a very important one to ask yourselves. So with that, in my extra minute, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Cohen from the Community Council of Community Housing Organizations. And next up, we have Angelica Cabande from the South Market Community Action Network to present their perspective on this program. So, round of applause for her.
Again, I'm Angelica Cabande. I'm with the South Market Community Action Network. We're a nonprofit organization in Soma, in the heart of downtown. And just like the planning department said, a lot of developments have been happening in our neighborhood. So we were established in 2000 due to the gentrification and .com impact that was happening in the South Market, particularly to the Filipino community. So we educated, organized, and mobilized ourselves to make sure that we're able to stay in the South Market and in San Francisco. The Filipino community has been moved around numerous times by the city, from Kearney Street, where Manila Town used to be, to Yerba Buena, and then now to 6th Street, Natoma Street area. And now we're still facing possible gentrification and threat of displacement due to the 5M project. So I'm not going to get too into the density bonus program, but I will tell you a little bit more of the different things that how we see the housing crisis.
It's almost done.
Okay, it's almost
Yeah. Sorry. It went to sleep.
So how many of you know that there is a housing crisis or feeling it, right? Yeah, we are all feeling it. In the .com era, it was mostly felt by the Mission and the South Market. But now, it's not even just those neighborhoods. It's the whole city. And that's a big threat for all of us. It doesn't matter if you're middle income, a working class, immigrant. We all need to worry about that because we're being pushed out of our neighborhood, right? We're being pushed out of our community. And one of the things that, for SoundCan, the density bonus, it's great that they're building affordable housing, but what about the people that's already been living there? What about the community that has been growing? And, I'm sure a lot of you are able to talk to your neighbors, but it's not the case anymore. There's a lot of new neighbors that don't even want to talk to you. Sorry. So this is just an overview of SoundCan. Though we do a lot of work around housing, we have a comprehensive analysis of what we want to achieve in our neighborhood, which is a healthy South Market neighborhood. That includes good jobs, affordable housing, healthcare, etc. So for us, it's been really challenging to organize around land use, but we haven't given up. It's because the city is so great at breaking down our neighborhood into area plans. And every time there's a new area plan coming up, we actually have to go to City Hall and talk about that. And sometimes they have different area plans going on at the same time. So it's a lot of pressure and capacity for the community. And as you could see, the tech industry, there's a lot. That's just some of it, but there's more. So what does the housing crisis look like, right? There's landlord harassment, evictions, but also luxury housing, micro units, changing of zoning in your neighborhood is part of the housing crisis. And City Hall to us is also part of this crisis because they're not proposing legislations that actually will help us, right? For example, Airbnb, making sure that the Arts Institute stop buying rent-controlled housing. And of course, Ron Conway and other folks who's investing in San Francisco are part of the crisis, right? So all this,
I love it.
I wanted to show that to you guys because we have to look at all of that as part of the bigger issue, the root cause of why all this crisis is happening. It's not just around landlord harassment or buying buildings. It's also, there's a bigger issue that connects with real estate investment. It connects with City Hall. It connects with who is really investing in San Francisco and being prioritized, right? So for SOMCAN, our strategy is always to educate, organize, and mobilize folks in the neighborhood, but also in the larger San Francisco. We can't just be all about our neighborhood. We have to connect and organize with different neighborhoods from the Mission all the way to here in the Richmond. So I just wanted to share with you some actual tactics that we have and strategies we have used that won and was able to sustain residents. So one is the Trinity Plaza. This is on 8th Street and Market. The landlord gave eviction notice to over 300 tenants in the building. For over 4 years or more, SOMCAN and the resident organized to make sure that they're not going to be removed from their building. And what came out of that was they won a package of being able to move to the new building that Trinity was building. And they were able to move all of their existing rent to what it is now. On top of that, we were able to get the landlord to provide 137 more affordable units. The second one I wanted to highlight was our Rincon Hill project fight. If you guys ever come through the big bridge, this is that ugly building that's blocking the view of the city, right, when you're coming in. So Rincon Hill project was over 400 units of development. It's two to three towers. And even though it was far away from the folks from the low income and immigrant residents in South of Market, we still wanted to organize and make it known by the city that development, regardless of what part of the neighborhood it is, it impacts the whole neighborhood and the whole city, right? So with this, we actually organized and forced the developer to invest over $30 million back into the community, which is now called the SOMA Stabilization Fund and is seated with different community folks in the area. And lastly, we actually didn't want to just react to development projects. We didn't want to just always having to put out fires. What we wanted to do was actually think about how can community planning really be community planning in terms of for us, right, to help us sustain there. So for over 2 years, SOMCAN had held community meetings, and we came up with the Youth and Family Special Use District. Hey, if developers are using special use district for their own development, why can't we use it for ours, right? So with this, we actually, at that time, due to the different development projects, we were only able to have our youth and family zone for 12 blocks. But right now, we're working with our supervisor in the community to expand it to the whole South of Market. And the intention of that was to make sure that youth families and our and seniors are able to stay in SOMA, but also benefit from all this development that's happening and making sure that our community is looked as a whole, not as a 13-plan area. So with the density bonus, so with this, what we learned is you have to really educate yourself, even though it's so boring to read through all those documents. If you don't want to read it, ask somebody else, okay? Always ask questions. Don't take it for what it is, right? 2, look at it as how is it impacting your whole neighborhood, not just the few blocks where that development is going to happen. And 3, how is your neighborhood going to look like in 2 to 3 to 5 years from now? How is that going to impact the environment of the neighborhood, your neighbors? So those are ways we actually analyze developments. That's why for the 5M project, we were very critical on it, because what the developer did is, they held community meetings, but they never shared with us what kind of development they're actually going to do till less than a year from that. And that's not how we see community planning. We see it as we have to look at the overall impact of the development before we actually talk about mitigation. Because if you switch that, what happens is you're getting crumbs, but you're getting a lot of impacts. And you might not feel it right now, but you're going to feel it in the next few years. Right? So that's what I wanted to share with you guys about